not crying in public.
Today, we're diving into the latest twists in the Snow White controversy, a drama that's only intensified with the release of the movie's second trailer. The numbers tell a story of resounding rejection from audiences. As of December 10th, the trailer has managed to gather just 27,000 likes, but on the other side of the spectrum, nearly 800,000 dislikes have poured in. That's a jaw-dropping 14-to-1 ratio of negativity. This overwhelming response paints a clear picture. Audiences are not happy. In fact, at this rate, the trailer seems on track to hit 1 million dislikes in the coming days, signaling a level of backlash Disney surely didn't anticipate. It's a tough spot for the studio and its leadership, and it raises serious questions about how the film and Disney's creative choices are being received by the public.
Launched Disney Plus only in 2019, so it's just over 4 years ago. In a very, very short period of time, we find ourselves second to Netflix in terms of global subscribers for a pure streaming business. We know that we ended up losing a lot of money on that, more so than we expected initially. Part of that was because we were chasing sub growth and not as focused as we needed to be on the bottom line.
It all started with an interview that turned what should have been a triumphant moment for RachelZegler into a public relations disaster. The young actress, fresh off her critically acclaimed debut in West Side Story, was cast as Snow White, a role that symbolized a new era for Disney's live-action remakes. But instead of embracing the legacy of this timeless classic, Zegler's remarks struck a nerve. In her now infamous interview, Zegler dismissed the 1937 original as dated and went on to criticize the storyline, specifically the romance between Snow White and the prince. She's not going to be saved by the prince, Zegler said, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
I had no idea what I was auditioning for when I auditioned. So it's a kind of a hilarious question to say, like, what drew you to the material? Is that, like, I didn't realize that I was reading lines with Dopey. It said, like, Jeff and Amy were reading lines. And then our director, Mark Webb, on Zoom was like, you know, and then Dopey's gonna look at you and whistle. And I took a pause and realized what I was auditioning for. And then it became like, I will elbow everyone out of the way.
While some praised her for wanting a more empowered portrayal of Snow White, others. The trailer seems on track to hit 1 million dislikes in the coming days, signaling a level of backlash Disney surely didn't anticipate. It's a tough spot for the studio and its leadership, and it raises serious questions about how the film and Disney's creative choices are being received by the public. It all started with an interview that turned what should have been a triumphant moment for RachelZegler into a public relations disaster. The young actress, fresh off her critically acclaimed debut in West Side Story, was cast as Snow White, a role that symbolized a new era for Disney's live-action remakes. But instead of embracing the legacy of this timeless classic, Zegler's remarks struck a nerve. In her now infamous interview, Zegler dismissed the 1937 original as dated and went on to criticize the storyline, specifically the romance between Snow White and the prince. She's not going to be saved by the prince, Zegler said, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. While some praised her for wanting a more empowered portrayal of Snow White, others saw her comments as dismissive and even disrespectful to a beloved classic. The backlash was swift. Fans took to social media to express their outrage, accusing Ziggler of not understanding the importance of Snow White to Disney's history and to its audience. Many felt her words alienated fans who had cherished the original for generations. Critics argued that Disney's decision to cast Ziggler and promote this new vision was another example of Hollywood pushing a modern agenda at the expense of timeless storytelling. Suddenly, Ziggler became the face of a growing controversy. What should have been a moment of celebration for her career turned into a lightning rod for heated debates about Disney's direction, generational divides, and even feminism. But the real question wasn't just about RachelZegler. It was about Disney's vision for Snow White, a vision that was about to face an even harsher spotlight. And then came the trailer. Disney had a vision they believed would bring Snow White into the 21st century. For decades, the original 1937 animated film was hailed as a cornerstone of Disney's legacy, a timeless fairy tale that introduced audiences to the magic of animation. But Disney decided it was time for a change, and this change would redefine not just Snow White, but everything she represented. In the new Snow White, the classic themes of love, kindness, and adventure were set aside to make room for a modernized narrative. Gone was the central love story. The prince, barely a footnote. The Seven Dwarves? Reimagined into a more inclusive group that sparked its own controversy. And Snow White herself. She was no longer the wide-eyed dreamer longing for her happily ever after. Instead, she was a leader, a fighter, and a symbol of empowerment. Disney framed this as progress. We want this Snow White to reflect the values of today's audiences, the company stated in interviews, but many fans weren't convinced. Critics argued that Disney was turning its back on the charm and simplicity that made the original so beloved. To them, this wasn't about updating the story, it was about replacing it entirely. And let's not forget the timing. Disney's previous live-action remakes, like The Little Mermaid, had also sparked heated debates about modernization, but none reached the scale of this backlash. Fans accused Disney of pandering to trends instead of respecting the legacy of their classic films. The sentiment was clear: Snow White didn't need a makeover, it needed to stay true to its roots. The tension was palpable, but nothing could have prepared Disney for what was coming next.
She's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. And so it's just a really incredible story for, I think, young people everywhere to see themselves in.
Snow White is running for president.
The release of the trailer would ignite a storm unlike anything they'd ever faced. When the second trailer for Disney's Snow White dropped, it wasn't the excitement of a new chapter in the studio's legacy that people were talking about. It was the numbers, and those numbers painted a devastating picture. On YouTube, the trailer amassed 27,000 likes, a modest showing at best, but the dislikes? A staggering 800,000. That's a 14-to-1 ratio of negativity. Within days, the dislike count was climbing toward 1 million, a stark message from audiences worldwide. This Snow White was not what they wanted. So what went wrong? Viewers pointed to almost every aspect of the trailer. The visuals felt off. The tone seemed disconnected from the magical allure of the original, and the deviations from the classic storyline left a sour taste for many. Critics argued that it lacked the heart of the original film, instead coming across as a heavy-handed attempt to modernize a beloved fairy tale. But the real damage came from the overwhelming sentiment that Disney had completely misread its audience. Fans who had grown up with the magic of Snow White felt betrayed, as though the studio was more focused on ticking boxes than creating something meaningful. For many, it wasn't just a bad trailer, it was a symptom of Disney losing touch with its roots. And it wasn't just longtime fans expressing their disdain. The backlash came from all corners. Nostalgic viewers, casual moviegoers, and even some industry insiders who questioned whether Disney's live-action remakes were becoming creatively bankrupt. The numbers didn't lie. This wasn't just a lukewarm reception, it was a full-blown rejection. But while the trailer was under fire, someone else was about to take center stage in the backlash. All eyes were now turning to RachelZegler. As the Snow White controversy spiraled, it wasn't just RachelZegler facing scrutiny. Disney itself was under fire, and at the center of the storm was Bob Iger. The company's CEO, tasked with steering Disney through turbulent waters, Iger now found himself grappling with a backlash that went beyond just one film. This wasn't just about Snow White anymore, it was about the very direction of the Disney brand. For years, Disney's live-action remakes had been a lucrative, if divisive, strategy. Films like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast raked in billions, even as critics accused the studio of relying on nostalgia instead of innovation. But the tide was turning. Fans were growing weary of the remakes, and Snow White seemed to crystallize their frustrations. Audiences weren't just rejecting the trailer, they were rejecting what they saw as Disney's larger agenda. For Iger, the stakes couldn't be higher. Disney was already facing declining box office numbers, shrinking streaming subscribers, and growing competition in the entertainment industry. The Snow White backlash threatened to become the latest in a series of missteps that painted the company as out of touch with its core audience. And yet, Disney remained quiet. There were no official statements addressing the controversy, no efforts to bridge the gap with disillusioned fans. Some speculated that Disney might tweak its marketing approach or even delay the film's release. But for now, the studio seemed to be holding its ground. This silence only fueled more speculation. Was Disney doubling down on its creative vision, or were they scrambling behind the scenes to salvage the film's reputation? Whatever the case, the message from fans was clear. They wanted Disney to listen, but as Disney faced mounting criticism, someone unexpected weighed in, amplifying the drama even further. Enter Joe Rogan. Just when it seemed the Snow White controversy couldn't grow any bigger, Joe Rogan entered the conversation, and his commentary sent shockwaves across social media. Known for his blunt takes and massive platform, Rogan didn't hold back when discussing the film RachelZegler and what he called Hollywood's woke agenda. On his podcast, Rogan dissected the backlash, framing it as a symptom of a larger issue within the entertainment industry. "This isn't about Snow White," Rogan remarked. "This is about a disconnect, a massive, growing divide between Hollywood elites and the audiences they're supposed to entertain." His words struck a chord with many viewers who felt Disney's remake was less about storytelling and more about making a statement. Rogan also took aim at RachelZegler's remarks about the original film. While stopping short of personal attacks, he criticized the tone of her comments, suggesting that dismissing a beloved classic was bound to alienate fans. Why mess with what people love? You're not just making a movie, you're rewriting history for millions of people who grew up with this stuff. His take went viral almost instantly, with clips from the podcast circulating across YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Supporters praised Rogan for saying what everyone's thinking, while critics accused him of adding unnecessary fuel to an already heated debate. Either way, his involvement only amplified the attention on Snow White and the issues surrounding it. The question now wasn't just about Snow White or Disney, it was about Hollywood as a whole. Was this just another controversy in the endless culture wars, or was it a sign of deeper cracks in the entertainment industry's foundation? The answer lay in the fan movements that followed, and they were growing louder by the day. As the Snow White controversy escalated, one question began to dominate the conversation. Was the backlash a genuine outpouring of fan frustration, or was it part of an organized campaign? The lines between authentic outrage and coordinated movements were becoming increasingly blurred. Social media platforms became the battleground. Dislike counts on YouTube skyrocketed, and hashtags like Not My Snow White and Boycott Disney trended across Twitter. Some fans pointed to Grassroots frustration, claiming they were simply tired of Hollywood remaking classics with modern spins they hadn't asked for. To these fans, Snow White wasn't just a poorly executed remake, it was the latest example of studios ignoring their audiences in favor of pandering to fleeting trends. However, others noticed patterns in the backlash. Certain online communities, particularly on forums like Reddit, appeared to be organizing campaigns to amplify negativity. Coordinated efforts to spam dislikes, flood comment sections, and share memes mocking the film suggested that some of the backlash might have been less organic and more calculated. This wasn't the first time Hollywood faced such a divide. Similar controversies erupted over The Last Jedi and The Little Mermaid, where passionate debates about modernization, representation, and nostalgia took center stage. But with Snow White, the stakes felt higher. It wasn't just a film under scrutiny, it was Disney's legacy. At the heart of the controversy lay a deeper cultural tension. Was the backlash truly about the movie, or was it a broader reflection of growing frustrations with Hollywood's priorities? Fans seemed divided not just over the film, but over what they believed entertainment should represent. The noise was deafening, but one thing was clear: this wasn't a problem Disney or Hollywood could ignore, and the implications for the future of entertainment were impossible to overlook. The Snow White controversy didn't just put Disney in the hot seat, it forced the entire entertainment industry to confront an uncomfortable reality. The growing divide between Hollywood and its audiences wasn't just about one movie or one actress. It was about a fundamental disconnect in how studios approach storytelling in a rapidly changing cultural landscape. For years, Hollywood has leaned into modernization, often reimagining beloved stories to reflect contemporary values. On paper, it makes sense. Audiences today are diverse, socially conscious, and vocal about their expectations for inclusivity. But somewhere along the way, studios like Disney may have underestimated the power of nostalgia, the deep emotional connection that viewers feel toward classic films. With Snow White, this disconnect came to a head. Fans weren't rejecting progress, they were rejecting what felt like a disregard for the essence of a story they grew up loving. And it wasn't just Disney facing this reckoning. Other studios have faced similar criticism for prioritizing trends over authenticity, leaving many to wonder, is Hollywood losing its ability to listen? But what happens next? Can Disney and the industry at large find a way to bridge the gap? Perhaps the lesson lies in balance. Audiences aren't asking for stagnation, they're asking for respect. Respect for the stories that shaped their childhoods and for their voices in shaping the future of entertainment. The Snow White drama might fade, but its impact will linger. For Disney, this was more than a controversy. It was a wake-up call. And for fans, it was a reminder that their opinions matter in shaping the media landscape. As we close this chapter, one thing thing is clear. The battle for Hollywood's future is far from over. Will studios like Disney course correct, or will they continue down a path that risks alienating the very audiences they depend on? Only time will tell.